I'm going to be talking about something that's very, very personal to me. I'm going to be talking about mindfulness and mental health. And in particular, it's about my personal experience and my journey that I've had over around about the past 12 months. A little bit about me. Most people would say that I've got quite an eccentric and outgoing personality. Life and soul of the party, quite happy to be the person that allows people to gather around knowledge about everything, being able to talk about any particular topic at all. But there is another side to me. I crash. And when I crash, it's a really dark and depressive state that I run into. Now, if there's anybody here who has family members or yourself has experienced depression, you can understand how difficult that can be. But with regards to myself, I have a particular personality disorder, which is known as borderline personality disorder. And this means that when these crashes happen, they can happen within a moment. So it isn't something that I slide into. I can be completely elated one moment, and something that somebody says or an experience that I have will cause me to feel a very strong emotion, which generally causes me pretty intense pain. So, what are personality disorders? Well, when I was first introduced to them, I suppose, I was given this statement: a type of mental disorder in which you have a rigid and unhealthy pattern of thinking, functioning, and behaving. A person with a personality disorder has trouble perceiving and relating to situations and people. This causes significant problems and limitations in relationships, social activities, work, and school. Now, I felt like I'd been hit by a brick when I was told this. I felt like I couldn't function within the world. I received a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, and I was at a stage where I really didn't know what to do or where to turn. My emotions were rising and dropping rapidly. It was causing me difficulties, and there is a fair element of this statement which is completely true. I had suffered with mental health issues for quite a long period of time. It had always just been diagnosed as depression. The circumstances of how it came about to get my particular diagnosis really are quite irrelevant at this point in time. So I just want to really move on to a journey through, and I'm going to do this chronologically to try and actually give you a bit of an understanding of how I've managed to get to the point where I am. I was given a referral after my diagnosis to MBCT, and I didn't really know a lot about it. I was just put into the chain of waiting and being told that, well, maybe it'll be next year. And then later on, might be 2018. And more recently, I found out that it might actually be 2019. So, do you want to just tell people what MBCT stands for? Sorry, MBCT is Mindfulness-Based Cognitive Therapy, and it's a particular therapy that is used for people with personality disorders. So I needed to learn more about my condition, and as somebody who works in IT, I have two very simple tools available to me, as many of you probably have experienced: Google and YouTube. And I discovered these two people. On the left is Marshall Linehan. Marshall Linehan is the absolute master as far as borderline personality disorder is concerned. During her research, she took, very, very similar to John Kabat-Zinn, the end-of-the-road cases, people who pretty much everybody had given up hope on. And during her research, she actually found out that she herself was suffering from borderline personality disorder. And this enabled her to be able to develop particular therapies around this. And the other person I discovered is a vlogger who's known as Recovery Mum. And she's absolutely astounding. I really did gain a really great understanding of not only the fact of aspects of BPD, but also the fact that it is possible to recover. So this statement that I was given at the beginning wasn't necessarily true. So this sort of started me on a little bit of a pathway to not only take the medication that had been prescribed to me, which I can assure you does not give you 100% of a cure. It knocks at best 20% off the top. I still had 80% of this emotional dysregulation. I'm still going up and down. I'm still having mania. I'm still having fits of rage. I'm still suffering depression. So there had to be something more. And I was referred by my community psychiatric nurse to something called distress tolerance, which is a 12-week course. And I was introduced to a rock for the first session. It's one of the greatest experiences that I had in my journey into mindfulness. And a set of rocks were put out on the table, and he said, choose a rock. So I picked up the rock that I quite liked. I thought, it's a rock. And he said, touch the rock. I started to touch the rock, and he said, what do you feel? Well, I feel a rock. I thought, no, what do you actually feel? I thought, well, I can feel it's a bit rough. I thought, well, is there anything else you can feel? Yeah, there are bits of it that are smooth. And he said, well, put it up to your ear and touch the rock. Is there anything you can hear? And I could hear the difference between the smooth and the roughness on the rock. He said, now look at the rock. So I looked at the rock, and I could then notice, my senses were really beginning to become engaged at this point, and I could notice sort of veins within the rock and different colours and the fact that, it was reflecting light in particular ways. And then he said, smell the rock. So I smelled the rock, and I could smell the sea. Now hopefully, you're thinking what I'm thinking. I've engaged a lot of senses here. Now, not a lot of people have done this in this particular session, but I licked the rock. I wanted to know what it tasted like. And I'd engaged all of my senses at that point, and actually, during this time, I'd forgotten everything else. There was just a rock. And it was actually quite an astounding experience for me. But I was still in a phase of difficulty, and a very, very good and close friend of mine introduced me to the group we have here. Found it on Meetup. Said, you really need to come along, you really need to experience this. So I did. The difficulty I had at that particular time was the fact that I was still going through the suffering, and the medication wasn't working for me. So in August, my medication changed. I had a particularly difficult time going from one medication to another. Well, thankfully, this particular one was a lot more successful than the others that I'd experienced. And this sort of gave me this 20% to be able to sort of return back to here and to sort of try and engage a bit more. And during this sort of journey of finding out something more and becoming more regular here, I started to discover these people, and I think you can probably recognise them all. John Kabat-Zinn, Tara Brach, and Brené Brown. And my personal favourite, and I think everybody has a little bit of a hero in mindfulness, and for me, it happens to be Kristen. I'll come back to Kristen a little bit later on as to why that was so important to me. Now, within me, there is a beast. And it's this beast that I found I had to conquer. But I had to work out what was triggering this beast to take control. Because when it hit me, it was like a raging bull. And I became a passenger. There was nothing I could do, or felt I could do, about what was happening, the way I was behaving, the experiences that people around me were having. And eventually, I managed to work it out through coming here not as regularly as I really wanted to. I worked out that it was fear. And fear, as you know, is an incredibly powerful thing to feel. We have fight, flight, freeze. Now, anybody that knows me in my personal life knows that I don't do the freeze and the flight thing. I fight. I'll be quite honest with you on that one. But I started to really think about fear. And what I realised was actually what was triggering this was frustration. It could be frustration about the way I was dealing with a particular person, or a particular process that was happening, or the way I was being dealt with in customer service. This could be on the phone, it could be in person. And what was actually happening was this was causing me to have an emotional response outside of fear. And because of my borderline personality disorder, this emotion was so incredibly heightened, and I was feeling it so strongly, that what I wanted to do was try to put the pain that I was feeling to the person or people that were in front of me. And the way that this was perceived was as aggression. It wasn't what I was trying to do. I was trying to convey the pain. Now, after the event, I would fall into, unfortunately, an element of remorse. This is the area where I would crash. It would be whirring and whirring around my mind. I'd be replaying the events again and again and again. It wasn't periods of minutes, it wasn't periods of hours. This could be days, this could be weeks. So I started to really focus, more importantly, on the mindfulness aspects of things, to be able to think about what my trigger was. And I realised that fear is in the future, because it's something that I'm expecting to happen. Which sort of led me on to this whole aspect of expectations and how unrealistic that they can be. And remorse was in the past. Well, neither of those are mindful. Mindful is about this moment. So I needed to find some sort of journey that I could go on to be able to sort of face this beast that I knew existed, and now I knew what triggered it. So I came back, and I came back regularly. And this man enlightened me. He didn't know he was in this presentation. But I must give him great thanks. Sean, I really do appreciate all the talks that you've given. It's been an amazing education that I've gone through, and it really has helped make a difference to me. And do remember, this is my personal experience that I've had of this. In about October, I started to realise there was a little bit of a light bulb. And eventually, it lit up. Now I know what you're all thinking, oh, you had a light bulb moment. But no, I've got borderline personality disorder. I've got multiple thought pathways. I didn't have one light bulb. I had lots of light bulbs. And they all turned on at the same time. And I suddenly had this realisation that the world actually wasn't as bad a place as I really thought it was. Why was I getting affected by the news? Why was I being affected by the fact that I was receiving bad customer service? Why was it the fact that somebody talking to me was causing me to have an emotional response the way that I was? So I started to focus more upon the moment. And the more and more I came here, the more and more I really began to understand that living in the moment was actually enabling me to sort of realise that this fear was something that was purely this trigger for this beast that had been breathing down my neck for years. And I evolved. And it's quite astounding because if my wife were here, she would be agreeing with me, because I'll give you the statement that she made. I feel like I'm living with a completely different person. And it was true, because I'd noticed it as well. I'd started to begin to really feel true empathy for other people. I was being able to climb down into that dark hole with them and to be able to experience what they were experiencing, rather than attempting to give people sympathy and standing at the top of the hole and going, no, it looks a bit dark down there. And this is what I was able to do because of mindfulness. I was able to do something that I hadn't been able to do. I'd always allowed this beast to stand behind me. I'd always allowed this beast to breathe down my neck. But mindfulness enabled me to turn and face it. And the moment that I faced it, I was able to visualize an arena. And by visualizing this arena, it didn't have to be here. I could put it where I wanted it to be. So when the fear came, and the frustration was hitting me, and I was beginning to feel that emotional response, I could see this raging bull coming towards me. And that gave me enough time to be able to be mindful, to bring myself to the moment. Now, I'm not saying it's 100% successful. And to be quite honest with you, I find it very, very hard at times to be mindful all the time. But it really was beginning to have a massive and dramatic effect. And for my wife to make that statement, it must have been doing something to me. I have, I believe, become a better person. And then I thought a little bit about this better person aspect of things, and I really began to realise that actually, up until this point, I actually thought I was a bad person who put on the mask of being a good person. And I thought I was pretending to be good to everybody. And that was all because of this bull that had been sat behind me. But the moment I stuck it in this arena, I started to get this centre of a gobstopper sat inside of me. And I began to actually understand that there was a real part of me inside. I was a really quite kind and caring and loving person. And the more mindfulness I practiced, the more layers of this gobstopper I started to evolve around it. And I really began to get a sense of self. Now, as I went through this journey, not only was it affecting me on the inside, but it started to affect me on the outside. And I was really, really surprised at how mindfulness was beginning to affect me physically. Not only in my appearance, it's completely changed, but also the fact that in November of last year, I weighed 15 stone 11 pound. I now weigh 13 stone 2 pound. I have done no dieting. I'll be quite honest with you, I have been walking the children to school and back. But the difference being is what I'd started to do was I'd started to control the impulsive side within me. And those impulses was that immediate comfort side. It was that fact that, oh, if I have another biscuit, it'll make me feel good. Yeah, it made me feel good for a few minutes. So I'd have to have another one. So it wasn't a conscious thought about dieting, but what it was more about the fact of understanding that the mindful practice that I was going through was making me realise and understand this impulsive behaviour that I was doing. And then I started to realise what was actually happening to me physically. In December of last year, I had some life-changing bad news. If it had not have been for the point that I had reached with mindfulness from August until December, I don't think I would have been able to have dealt with it in the way that I did. I was completely calm, I faced it, I was in the moment, and I allowed myself to be able to just focus on the here and now, not to worry about the future, not to concern myself with the past, and just to accept the point of where I was. So in January, I started to really think about, what have I learned? Well, I learned the most important thing at the beginning, which was your mind must be clear. Because if my mind wasn't clear, then I knew that what would happen was that beast that was sat in the arena would sometimes sneak around and it would hit me from the side. So I still had the occasional sort of outburst, and I do now, but they're nowhere near as intense as they used to be. I also realised I had to unlearn everything that I effectively had conditioned myself to. Now, the brain is a wonderful tool. There is, throughout your entire life, the ability to be able to change its plasticity, to be able to change the pathways that are there. And I've been effectively suffering for 30 years, and I've been learning to repeat these behaviours again and again and again. But mindfulness enabled me to take these huge, great motorways and to be able to just turn them into little side roads, and to be able to build new and bigger roads to enable me to be able to draw myself to the moment. Mindfulness can lead to compassion, and this is where I come back to Kristen Neff. The most important thing that I realised when I started sort of really diving into the other aspects of mindfulness was watching a lot of videos by Kristen Neff, and I realised that one of the things I really had to do was to be compassionate towards myself. Because if I couldn't heal myself, and I couldn't experience then common humanity, then the mindfulness aspect was only one part of what I really needed to do. And that is one of the reasons why Kristen is sort of one of my heroes, because I've sort of been able to take this big sort of circle of mindfulness and to add these two other aspects to it. And it's made a huge difference. One of my mindfulness practices that I do is quite simply going through a meditation and just holding myself. And it's a marvellous thing for me to be able to do, because it enables me to be in touch with me. It's not selfish, because by me being able to heal myself, it gives me a greater understanding of common humanity. And I'm doing it by using mindfulness. So it is a really, really useful tool for me, and it was what was adding these layers and layers to this gobstopper. Now, practice, for me, is the key to maintaining this peace. I have a very rigid routine as far as my practice is concerned. I have a black and white thinking mind because of my borderline personality disorder. So I do not say to myself, I will try to meditate tomorrow for 20 minutes. I say, I will. Because to me there is do or do not. Because if I say I will try, I give myself leeway to make excuses. Oh, I need to get that done. I need to be busying myself with this particular thing. There's something that I need to be getting on with. My mind isn't working methodically. My mind becomes frenetic. So when I say I will do this, then that's what I actually get on and do. To the point of, I schedule time in my diary for mindfulness. Nobody can take that time away from me. If necessary, and I'm in an environment where I can't practice mindfulness where I am, then I take myself to a little safe spot. I take myself to the toilet. Nobody's going to disturb me in there And I can take 3 minutes or 5 minutes, centre myself, bring myself back to the moment, walk out, smiling, happy, and able to deal with one particular thing at a time. I can stop my mind racing.
Hey.
This is my new raging bull. It's a bit more friendly, isn't it? And what I've also done with it is I've made it really small as well. So when it comes up to me now, I can tickle it under the chin and I can feed it hay. That's a bit different to the way it used to hit me. Now this is one of my sort of favourite quotes that is quite appropriate to me. Maybe the fear is that we are less than we think we are, when the actuality of it is we are much, much more. Now if we go back to the fear aspect of things, I was experiencing frustration, which was causing an emotional response, which was displaying aggression, which then led me to remorse. I've managed through mindfulness to be able to control the emotional response, which meant there wasn't aggression being displayed, which meant I didn't have to experience the remorse. So all I was left with was the F. Now, okay, we all F every now and again. None of us are perfect. But the beauty of it was that was what I was left with.
It's probably one of the best presentations that I've enjoyed, so thank you.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you for that, Steve, and that's the perfect note because we're out of time. So we do need to wrap up now, and that's an excellent way to finish it. I would like to say a huge thank you to Tony. I think that was a fantastic. And of course, not only is that a fantastic thing to do, but you did it in a fantastic way. It was excellent. Thank you very much.